rush 4. Plenty of time for John. Now squeezes, steps up in the pocket. LA can run. Inside the 10. Head first. He falls off the 5-yard line.
Manning out of the gun. Manning lets it fly. It's caught by Thomas. There's the record for Peyton Manning.
Rushing 4, ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground and still on the ground. Picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line.
Here we go. First snap of the overtime. The Broncos have been in 3 overtime games this year. They won them all. Got him at the 40. It's Thomas at the 50. Stiff arm got him 3 to the 30. To the 20. Thomas to the 10. Denver's going on to New England. They win it on the first.
And welcome everybody to the 5280 podcast on the MHRT Network. My name is Mundungus Creevy, as always, alongside my co-hosts Glenn, Cam, Bree, and Mr. Boggins. We are a fan-led Broncos-based podcast bringing you all of our insight and opinions on our favorite team, the Denver Broncos. How's everybody doing this fine Tuesday?
I'm doing grand. I just want to make sure that at the end of the podcast when we're getting lunch, I don't get the chicken salad.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I get the pizza.
I will 100% fire you. I don't care if I have the authority or not. So.
That's right.
That's also fair.
Speaking of chicken salad, did everybody watch the USFL?
I tried to, but SVU was on. And I'm like, well.
Priorities. Really?
We were watching Birmingham SVU.
Yeah. Hey, how about them Breakers, though? Number 1, just like, everyone else, every other team in the South. All right, it's because no one in the
North.
So
there's what, 8 teams?
It was
8 teams, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we got the New Jersey Generals lost to the Birmingham Stallions, and so just so everyone knows, all games are played in Birmingham this season. So the home team, the Birmingham Stallions, won 28-24. The Houston Gamblers beat the Michigan Panthers 17-12. The New Orleans Breakers beat the Philadelphia Stars 23-17, and the Tampa Bay Bandits beat the Pittsburgh Chicken Salads / Maulers 17-3.
Let's go Bandits.
I'm having like a flashback from when I was 13 years old, hearing the scores being read.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm old enough to have watched the original. Anyway,
I will say, like, I am a Breakers fan because they got Kyle Sloter as quarterback, but I will say this: he didn't look fantastic.
No, it's all about the defense.
Play in general, it wasn't all that fantastic.
You know who didn't look good either?
Oh, no.
Paxton Lynch. Was it one play, one pick? Is what it ended up being?
I mean, or was it like he had like a fumble and then a pick? Yeah,
something. It was bad.
I mean, when you have Jeff Fisher and Paxton Lynch, what do you think's going to happen? You know what I mean?
Well, and even
when I saw a former Bronco quarterback go in and have a fumble and a pick, I thought it was Drew Lock.
Check.
We dig.
I'm never gonna escape it.
I think it's the Shea Patterson is the starting quarterback over Paxton Lynch.
Yeah,
he was terrible, and he still looked better than Paxton Lynch.
I don't know. Well, I mean, I was gonna say Shea Patterson actually looked not that bad, but I'm liking the USFL, but I like the direction. I think even though the NFL may not like say that they are experimenting with the idea of a developmental league, I think that they're sort of telling us that they're kind of like hinting at this potential developmental league with like the ideas of like the AAF and the USFL and then the XFL. So I think they're kind of like telling us that they're kind of experimenting with this idea of a developmental league, and hopefully, no one chooses Paxton Lynch just for the sake of I'd rather not dig up my old tweets again with Paxton Lynch and my old comparisons that I used to make with Paxton Lynch when he was drafted from Broncos.
That's the best part, Cam. You just dunk on yourself. So
Right.
I mean, I saw Richie's comment that I have more Brady jerseys behind me than Broncos stuff. I'll have you know I have 2 more in my closet. So
boom,
take that.
Broncos stuff or Brady jerseys.
Boom.
Brady jerseys.
Okay, well, that's just that's trying to support you, and then
EJ wants to know if we should sign Terrell Owens at receiver since he caught a touchdown. And what was that? The fan-led league or whatever that's called?
Yeah, it wasn't the USFL, but it was like some maybe like a
Fan
Reno
controlled
football league
football.
almost.
Fans,
fan
like
control
fans
football,
call
yeah.
the play or whatever.
Yeah.
Or
All
you
the
could
fans
just
make the
put
new
Chad
rules.
Johnson out there since he's wanting to come back for
Why
training
don't we
camp.
just do like a run back of the Bengals and grab both Owens and Ocho Cinco?
Yeah, why don't we just play Madden 2000? You know,
or just create both of them.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Who should
But yeah, it was. I mean, the USFL wasn't bad. I mean, I looked at it as it's football, so I'm going to watch it. I don't care.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to think about like where, like The Rock recently invested in. I mean, decently recently invested in the XFL.
Right.
After they, tried and flopped, and the AFL tried and flopped, and it just seems like every other year there's a new one, and then it goes away, and then there's another one, and then it goes away. So I'm interested to see if like the XFL comes during this still existing, or if it waits until it dies.
Well, and
it pops up.
I did notice that the USFL was broadcast on Fox and USA and FX and FS1.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking they have some sort of financial backing with like a broadcast deal. So I'm assuming they're going to stick around for at least another year.
They do a little bit, and because it's directly related to their broadcasting rights, which is how I think they're kind of fronting a lot of that cost. With the XFL, they have a little bit of a leg up, though, just only brand recognition, and then also their ability to work directly with the NFL. So I think the XFL probably has a better shot this time around, especially with the new owners and coming to age with what they tried to do the last time. And obviously COVID ill-timed and killed that, but the USFL is already starting to show a little bit of its underlying foundation that looks a little shady to me. So you can dig through Twitter, you can find that they're constantly talking about that today as it comes to light, just how they're not allowing players to talk about their contracts, which I find a little weird.
Yeah. And and I think that we were I was talking about the developmental part, with the NFL. I think obviously there's times we all know that the AAF folded, but I think one of the biggest things and one of the biggest takeaways from there was also one of the biggest rule changes that ended up being proposed in the NFL circles, which was the 4th and 15 rule, or instead of like an onside kick, I believe, or something like that, like they decided to, do like a big, like 4th down conversion or something like that. And if you had the opportunity to, get the conversion or whatever, you obviously got to keep the ball. So I think that the thing that I'm noticing is that like, it may not like be a long-term thing, but also I think it also affords the NFL of implementing some exciting new opportunities for the game to like expand its future. I will say, I like the idea of the 3-point. I'm not going to lie. I like the idea of the 3-point that the USFL is doing right now, which is, I was doing some reading, and you have the option of either running the football or passing the football from the 10-yard line. And obviously if you score, you get 3 points. And then obviously your normal conversions, and that's after a score, obviously. But you have your typical one, which is point after your 2-point conversion, but your 3-point is obviously, from the 10-yard line. So I think that's kind of like where my excitement is like, it's not so much like, maybe some of the other stuff. And, but I like the excitement of like future prospects of what they can do to make the NFL better.
I think you can really tell, though, that the chipped ball is probably not the best invention right now, at least with the added weight. That's going to cause significant issues for any quarterback to really have a decent game.
The Kickers too. The Kickers had a terrible weekend.
I think
I don't know if that's the ball or they just suck, but they were shanking it all over the place.
Tebow said he used to use a chip ball. That's why he threw the ball right into the ground all the time.
I was going to say, like, that is probably like maybe one of the biggest things that I'm not the biggest fan of as far as the camera angles and stuff that they've been using with the USFL. Them putting like a camera on like the kicking level and then, taking it like once he kicks it like through the uprights. Like I'm dizzy every single time it goes through the uprights. He's like,
well, and they've got the camera right here on helmets on some players, right? And
which
then they
is
got that
cool to
drone
an extent.
camera, which is cool. But like if I was a player on the field, I'd be terrified because that thing was zipping in between players, getting ready for the kickoff.
I mean,
like what happens if the battery dies and it falls on your head?
That's not how it works. But I'm more scared of like the actual NFL with the huge cameras on the wires hanging above. Like those have dropped before. Drones they automatically lower as the slowly as the battery's dying. But I also wish they would have used drone cameras with like the ability for 1080p. Like they were just such bad quality going in between the actual footage on the sidelines and then going to those drone cameras. It just looked like some kid's drone. Very good pilots, but it was kind of weird. I like the idea though.
Yeah, the idea makes sense, especially like for review angles. Like if they're wanting to get the helmet cams and the drone cams, like it makes sense. But,
and I'm always down for more coach mics and stuff like that. Like that. that's always fun. It probably sucks for them, but I like it. It's great for me.
Well, it's great for all football fans too. I think that you can see that NFL fans are raring to go, that they're willing to go through the USFL to get their fix, and betting fans alike are also taking advantage of that. So it's hard to complain. It'll be interesting though to see how it ends at the end of the season and whether or not it was profitable. With all those weather delays and cancellations, it'll be interesting to see how that affects and how many games can you really attend if they're all in the same place.
In a city that has 200,000 people. So I think they're really just banking on the TV crowd, but
I mean, they got $3 million, right? The first was that compiled over all the games. It was like 3 million viewers.
I think it was over. I think it was over 2 of the games. One was like 2.1 and one was over 8.
It's decent, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like if that's what you're getting opening week, we'll see how it kind of progresses.
Well, I don't know if anyone else was watching it and going like, all right, could that guy get a training camp contract? Or could that we need a cornerback.
I did have to look at the quarterback, so it was great.
Yeah. I don't think any of them are going to be quarterbacks. I think it'll probably be defensive players.
I did like the backup quarterback that came in the first game. He played on the Stallions.
Perez?
Was it Jamar Smith?
I
thought he played pretty good after he kind of calmed down.
Super good athlete. Yeah.
But I digress, as Brady would say. But speaking of terrible human beings, let's talk about Tom Brady a little bit. So this whole thing,
Homie needs to stop posting stuff with like out.
Please censor out my screen, please, so I can.
This whole thing with too much shirtless pics, too many up the shorts videos. Like, what is this? What is this life he's leading now?
No, this whole thing with his last touchdown ball that sold for what was it, $500,000 or something like that, because he decided not to listen to anyone and stay in football.
They
sale has
refunded
actually
it.
been voided. So good on the guy that bought it, because I bet he felt terrible. But how dare you, Tom Brady?
I don't think terrible
not listen to people and just retire.
Well, how is that his fault?
Because he didn't retire.
It's what he wanted to do.
Other people.
It's what he wanted to do. He wanted to get back into the game, right?
We don't do what we're supposed to do.
I don't
know what that means.
I don't know.
I will fight every single one of you right now. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that Tom Brady coming back is one of the best things for the sports. It includes the best player to ever play the game continues to be on television. He's proving he can do things at ages that he probably nobody would have predicted this. And also he came back. That's the funny thing about when you're, I'm going to go a little existential right now, because everything is just valued at what the supply and demand is. So if you're paying that much for a football, you may want to reconsider why you were willing to pay that much in the first place. So I don't know. That's interesting to me.
Do you think when he received the football, it was slightly
deflated?
less? That's what it is. Maybe that's the reason he wanted to give it back.
Where's the exit button? I'm going to leave.
Also, he probably
All
came
right.
back because he saw the quarterback situation in the NFC and said, we
Okay,
might coast into this.
I can do this again.
Yeah. And we all know that that football landscape is just so much better with Brady in it. I mean, as much as people want to harp on Brady, I mean, he's the greatest of all time. I mean, and there's a reason why people feel like he's the greatest of all time, or for instance, Brady, the love that she has for Brady, like there's just an aura that he has about him, and and I know for myself being a golfer as well, I'm really excited about the match that he's going to be doing with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes.
Golfer?
Oh, did you say golfer or golfer?
I thought you said golfer.
Like you said golfer.
This feels like a scene in Caddyshack. When he
golfer truther. You're a golfer truther.
Kill all the gophers.
I thought that you were like a Jared Goff fan, and that like
Jared Goff.
No, actually, according to my tweet history, I'm actually a Paxton Lynch fan, and I believe that, and I believe that Paxton Lynch was going to have a better career than Jared Goff and Carson Wentz.
Cam, that was after those tweets don't exist because they kicked you off of Twitter for a while, didn't they? So
I know
we didn't. You don't need to admit that. We couldn't find those things.
Mm-hmm.
It's better to publicly admit it than have them search it, right?
That's fair.
So, speaking of NFL quarterbacks, and it's a little bit more related to the Broncos, Derek Carr gets a 3-year, $121.5 million extension with a no-trade clause. Too much, not enough? What do you think?
I mean, in this valuation of quarterback cycle, I think that's right around par, but Derek Carr has not been Boggins, are you waving down there? Do you have something to say?
No,
you're waving.
What's up?
Yeah. Sorry,
Comment.
I was like,
no, you're good.
He's like, Bree, I got something. Bree, I got something.
You guys. All right. So with the valuation of the quarterback cycle, I think what you're going to see are these exploding and exponential growth in these contract numbers. Obviously, to me, I think that's a well-inflated number. Although Derek Carr did throw the 5th most yards, what he did with that, and what I'll continue to preach, is he was not winning games or scoring points. So to me, I guess if the Raiders really need to keep him around because that's the quarterback that you think is going to get you to the promised land. But as far as he's just been long-standing with the Raiders, I think they made a decision to keep him around. And obviously Josh McDaniels coming in and getting rid of Derek Carr could have been the end of his Raiders tenure before it even began. Yeah. So maybe it's twofold.
Well, what's interesting is the Patriots had actually looked into trading for Carr last season. So now with the GM and the offensive coordinator from the Patriots coming to the Raiders, it makes sense that they would keep him. I mean, so what does that mean for Russell's contract? Because he's certainly going to get, is he going to hit
more than that?
At this point?
Nice segue, Glenn.
I was going to say it's more astronomical numbers, because I think that's going to be the thing is your $40 million a year is going to be your market value up until the very next market value change, right? And so, I mean, are people in today's society ever worth that amount of money per year? No, but that's just the way the market value is today. And so, I mean, probably if Derek Carr is worth, alongside, 40 million a year, then Russell's probably worth what, 45 million a year, maybe even 50. I mean, Kyler Murray is probably worth even, 45. I mean, even if Derek Carr is worth 40.
Geno Smith just got $7 million. I mean, let's be.
Yeah. So
it's funny money at this point.
But the thing is I think as far as just we talk about just from did he deserve the contract though? Carr absolutely deserved the contract in my opinion. I think he's underrated. I think he's underappreciated as far as a quarterback goes. I think as far as the Raider problems, it's never been Carr. In my opinion, it's never been Carr. It's been some of the problems that have been around him, and and maybe.
Are you talking like receiving talent is the problem, or what's?
I think it's not necessarily Darren Waller, but I would say that like the weapons around him, like the consistent weapons around him, and then even not to throw a wrench in. But I think coaching has been a little bit of a problem too, because I think that if he can have that consistent offensive, coach in that scheme that can work with him for years and years and years, then I think you're going to see, a lot of growth.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said Derek Carr is a good QB. I don't know why people got this idea at some point that he wasn't, and people like made fun of it for some reason. Like, Carr has been a solid QB, and in this league, sometimes that's what you'll take, and especially if you're Josh McDaniels coming into this, coming into a new team, like who else are you going to swing on? Like, you're going to swing on a QB in this draft? You're going to wait till next year? You're going to have to build off that. You have a roster right now that you're really trying to develop, or you have built a roster. I mean, you want a quarterback that can drive your ship and drive it go well, and Derek Carr can. I find this very, very good for the Raiders. Actually, he's currently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth highest APR or APY. So I don't, over Stafford and Prescott and Russ is going to jump up. Russ is going to be, we're not going to look at Deshaun numbers. Deshaun numbers, hopefully, like, let's pray that Deshaun numbers are completely, out the window.
Yeah.
We're probably going to look at over 150 mil guarantee at least, probably maybe like 170. So,
but I mean, like, it's going to be a huge change, even positionally. We're already starting to see that with the corners, and we're already starting to see that with the wide receivers. Denzel Ward just got $20 million a year, and I believe it was James Palmer tweeted today, that Pat Surtain's at some point is going to be, maybe the highest, and richest corner in NFL history at some point, because with the way the Ward got $20 million a year.
And looking back at this, Derek.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, looking back at the contract, Derek Carr is only fully guaranteed 25 mil. So it's not like it breaks the bank for them, and it doesn't secure, like, it's nothing like, what is it? I mean, I get Mahomes is 63, Aaron is 101, Dak is 95, and then you have Deshaun, who's out in no man's land at 230.
So between Deshaun and Ward, the Browns just guaranteed over $300 million in contract.
Yeah, that's insane. Boggins, I need a little bit more help here. And I don't know if it's just bias or orange glasses, or I've just never been a fan of Derek Carr. Mm-hmm. And if the Raiders haven't won a playoff game in how many decade and a half plus, where do you find that he's even a standard quarterback if he's not winning those? Is it the Raiders organization and Derek Carr could go in? That's just saying that he has the potential to, that he has the ceiling to. That's not saying that he would.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the age-old question: how much do you really put on the quarterback? You know what I mean? Like,
you've been saying it's everything,
huh?
We've been saying it's everything that the quarterback makes the.
Like, it's the biggest piece, absolutely. And if you don't have a quarterback that drives the ship, that's a huge problem. But when you don't have any help or coaching, like, don't get me wrong, John Gruden is a good offensive minded coach. However, who did they have? They had Josh Jacobs and they had Darren Waller that they lucked into. They didn't have anybody on defense. They lucked into Max Crosby. They had Khalil Mack and they got rid of him. Damian Arnett. Trash. They got Morrig. There's fine.
Renfro?
Abrams. Trash. What?
Renfro.
They also lucked into Renfro, who's a good slot. Like, that's what do you like? Look what we're giving Russ.
But I mean, you also have to look at like what type of quarterback Derek Carr is. I mean, we're not sitting here saying that he's like the Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady type where you can put the team on your back and carry it. He's more the Alex Smith, Joe Flacco when he didn't suck type.
Oof. I give him more than that. I definitely give him more than that.
But like, he's, I would say, a better game manager, but still more of a game manager than than Aaron Rodgers is going to be.
I'd go more Matt Ryan. I go more Matt Ryan status.
Yeah.
I think when you give him the weapons, he can really shine, but
Yeah.
Has he had the weapons?
But they've been like Oakland, or not Oakland. The Raiders have been the opposite of the Broncos. Like the Broncos have had terrible offense and good defense, and the Raiders have had good offense, terrible defense. So even if they would get close in games, defense would let them down every time.
Yeah, I think that for Derek Carr, I mean, it really has been. I will say, and their offense actually was great. With when Henry Ruggs was in that lineup, and so frankly, I think we saw how good Derek Carr was when Henry Ruggs was in that lineup. And so I think that when you now pair it with this idea that they've been able to acquire Devontae Adams, I think that we really will see the best that we've ever seen of Derek Carr. Doesn't necessarily attribute to like future success or like future like division championships and so on, because we all know that the AFC West is just ridiculous. And so I think that just as far as with what we're talking about with Carr, the pairing of like overall with the marriage between Josh McDaniels and his game managing style, I really think that it's a perfect marriage for Carr, in my opinion, because I think that and Sue, you can talk about the schematics of a guy like a Hunter Renfrow and a tight end of Darren Waller, and then now with Devontae Adams. I think the marriage is there, in my opinion.
So FanDuel tweeted out they ranked the AFC quarterbacks today, and they had Carr at 7. They had Russ at 5 in the AFC, behind Allen, Mahomes, Burrow, and Herbert.
That sounds about accurate, I guess.
Yeah. Lamar was right. It was at 6, Carr at 7, Watson at 8. And the last 5 were yeet. Tua, Trevor Lawrence, Trubisky, Zach Wilson, and Davis Mills.
Trevor Lawrence is under Tua, huh?
We've got Raider Casper dropping some facts on us.
Raiders defense average points per game since Carr was drafted in the 30th worst in the NFL.
Not
I like it. If he had ever been available and we were in the same situation, I would have taken him in a heartbeat.
Oh, I that was floated for a while, like how Derek Carr was on the trading block and like potentially the Broncos were a suitor. I never really necessarily believed that because in division with a capable quarterback, that doesn't make much sense. But for what I have taken that, absolutely.
Yeah, it felt
I feel like his brother's failures almost like have filtered on.
He's not a showy quarterback. Like he's not a deep ball whiz or anything like that. He's not. He's not. I don't want to say a game manager because he makes like impressive throws.
Yeah.
But he's not Josh Allen. He's not Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
But he can get the job done when you place him in good situations. And I think
he
with Josh
hasn't
McDaniels,
gotten the game. He hasn't gotten it done.
But he's not Russell Wilson, and we have Russell.
So we're saying that he's just never gotten a fair shake. It's the coaching, it's the weapons, it's the
So let me ask you this. Do you believe that's the same situation with Matthew Stafford?
I'm not a Matthew Stafford fan either.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm just asking questions because I'm like, how do I look at this in a way where I'm like, maybe Derek Carr isn't the problem and maybe it's everybody else. But
yeah, I guess we'll find out for sure.
Yeah. This is the time to find out. I will say, we were talking about like, should the, would the Broncos have been acquiring him or, should we have acquired him, or been interested in him? Yeah. I mean, I kind of found it, for one, I mean, anything was an upgrade for us at quarterback, right? But I mean, two, it was kind of like the same, it was kind of the same argument for when Phillip Rivers was the Chargers quarterback, right? Because it was just like, if Rivers was on the Denver Broncos, then I certainly wouldn't have minded the idea. Obviously, there would have been some Bronco fans that wouldn't have minded or would have hated the idea because of the whole rivalry between the Chargers and the Broncos, and then of course the Raiders and the Broncos. So, I get that. It's one of those things that just like, it's just about better performance, and there's no question Derek Carr would have been a better quarterback for sure if you put him on the Broncos.
So let's take this conversation and spin it towards the Broncos and Russell Wilson. So he has officially bought a house. I don't know if it's the Denver area or in the.
I wouldn't call that a house. That's not a house.
The mansion with 4
It's in the
bedrooms
same
and 12
town as
bathrooms.
Peyton and
I
Owen.
still don't get that. Why do you build a house with 4 bedrooms and 12 bathrooms?
Because you need one for your basketball court and your game room and your office and your kitchen. Like because you don't want to have to walk all the way
Why
to
do you
your
need one for your
bedroom.
kitchen?
Well, like a powder room. So there's one in the powder, and there's probably one in the unfinished basement, and there's probably one over by the pool, and then there's one over by the
unfinished basement.
Think about a world where you don't have to walk
If I
more
pay
than
25
5
million, I
feet
better have a
to
finished
poop.
basement.
What a beautiful.
Well,
I mean, that's one of those houses that was built for Taco Bell. That's what that is.
By Taco Bell, baby.
It's kind of like those bathrooms are like Starbucks. They're on every single corner. I mean, so if you find yourself that you need to go to the bathroom, maybe that was the whole reason that you can be able to access the bathroom very easily.
As a big fan of convenience, I would be very, very satisfied in Russell Wilson's.
Boggins, would you make it a journey to like use every single one of them?
Dumb question. Of course I would.
Okay, but would you try to use all of them in one visit, or would you try to stretch it out to 12 different visits?
How would you?
What kind of human? What do you think I am?
I'm just saying. How do you know you're going to get 12 visitations to Russell Wilson's house?
How much Taco Bell do I have to eat
early on in the evening, and you just keep not embarrassed.
I'd make a calendar, and it would get done.
I'm so
okay. So
it's great. You can say I'll be in the bathroom, and nobody will be able to find it.
There you go. So with Russell Wilson moving to the Denver Broncos, we have definitely seen a culture change in Denver. But is that because of Russell Wilson? Is that because of Coach Hackett, or a little bit of both?
Yeah, I will say there needs to be a fair shake for George Payton there. I really do. I think that, the moment that George Payton stepped foot into that room, we started to see the implements of it get started. So I think, so George Payton needs a fair shake in that too. It's not, because we also know that who was the guy that hired Hackett? It was George Payton.
Amen.
Who was the guy that, made the trade for, Russell Wilson? It was George Payton. And,
Amen.
So I mean, so I think it got started a year later. And it's funny enough that we are, having a draft here in about a week. I mean, he had a draft of his lifetime in a week. Last year.
Amen.
So I mean, like it was crazy. So after that point, that culture changed really.
I'd have to agree with Cam because it starts from the top. Where did all those changes come from? It wasn't overnight. It wasn't 180 degrees at a time. But what was interesting is how quickly that really started to take shape. So Peyton obviously had a year to feel things out, brings in a new head coach with an insane amount of energy, and then brings in a quarterback with an outstanding amount of energy. And you could feel this swell in Broncos country. The way that we talk about this team has changed. The way we feel about the course has changed. We're so hopeful. We're throwing out, Super Bowl or bust. Like there is a lot of energy behind Broncos country. The players are excited. And I think all of that momentum is really important going into the season because of the mindset and the human aspect of playing football and being in this realm, because you get tired and I think that you get worn down. And so bringing in all of these positive changes, I think is going to pay dividends in its own right outside of talent and willingness to win. So the culture has changed. I think the way that we start every show has changed. It's not this like, you almost feel dragged on to bring some form of entertainment. And now it's like, we get to talk about Russell Wilson for an hour. I will allow this to be my villain origin story and say that some of it's a little over the top for me. And I think that energy is a marketing tool. And I think that that's serving really well for making Denver relevant again nationwide because of the reach that Russell Wilson has. This is an entirely different ballpark that we are not even looking at the whole picture for. And that'll start to play out towards training camp and the start of the season. Preseason is going to be insane. When's the last time preseason was insane for the Denver Broncos? And the AFC West is going to be incredible. So there's this entire, not only the culture, but the entire energy surrounding this team and this division is bonkers.
Another thing too is that Peyton's brought to it is not only putting these other two pieces in place, is that he started re-signing players and keeping them in Denver, whereas Elway would always try to lowball and lost a lot of those guys. So players, when they were playing for their second contract, they were often trying to impress other teams because they didn't think they were going to be staying with Denver, and that's changed here. One of the first things he did, he got Justin on a long-term deal. Then he somehow gets Cortland and Tim to sign for several years at what has turned to be a fraction of what other wide receivers of their stature are making in the NFL at this point. So, I mean, it's the players want to stay around. A lot of the players, when they leave, they still live in town. I mean, Emmanuel Sanders still lives in Denver, but I think that it's got to be just such an energy in that building. I would love to have the opportunity to set foot in there.
And I will say, just with the George Payne thing, and again, if you were to make an argument for any of those other culture changes, they all certainly have a part to play. It's just it all certainly comes to head when you talk about Payton, and then even back to the draft a little bit from last year, or just even dating back to last year. I will say it's really important to, when you start that initial culture from the very, very beginning with no owner. And this is why it's so important with that culture that he's been able to establish with Russell Wilson at that helm, is to make it, I know it's certainly an auction bid, but to make it enticing enough to have owners be interested in buying the Broncos. And look, I mean, it certainly seems like, Walton is probably, as we all know, the most expensive one. So, I mean, maybe to certainly look at it from the standpoint of most appealing. I mean, like, I don't know. I just think that, from the standpoint of just even dating back to last year, he's truly been, maybe it feels like sort of schematic in how he's gone about things and to truly make it even more appealing each and every year.
Yeah, and I know we haven't seen a lot from Coach Hackett since he was brought in, because, I mean, there really hasn't been a whole lot to do as far as practices go and dealing with players and things like that. But this first week, they had meetings and classroom sessions and throwing sessions. But I believe his first thing was to start out with, was it a basketball tournament, or was it just like a shoot around?
It was some competition, and apparently Sutton won, and he did reference he muttered under his breath that 31 did not have a good day. So
because I think the whole thing, especially with the last 3 years with Fangio, is you're hearing a lot of players talk about how there wasn't really a whole lot of fun in practice. And I think Hackett being able to kick it off with having fun at the kickoff kind of sets the tone for what we're looking at for like training camp and OTAs.
Yeah. Imagine if someone got hurt though. That would have been.
Man. Stop it.
Dude, just shut up, Glenn.
That was the first thing when I heard that they were doing a basketball competition. I'm like, oh,
Glenn's lost a hair for every lie he's told.
Well, I think that the stark contrast to that is, could you imagine Fangio ever allowing that, or the previous administration? It's a different approach to, also players are players first. They're human beings first. They like to have a good time. Also, it's nice to have things not centered around football. So I'm not too worried. You could get injured walking down the stairs of your house. I mean, have you ever fallen down a set of stairs?
Every day.
I don't. Yeah. Every day.
I'm not going to go into detail, but
I will say, it's one thing to wrap your head around like the excitement too of like watching even a press conference and the excitement that he certainly exudes in a presser, or just even the stuff that you're hearing, like the, maybe like a basketball event that they're doing, like as a team build up type of deal. Right. But it's just, it's another thing to, hear those kinds of things, but it's also another thing to see it unfold in training camp. And to what Bree talked about with training camp, it's like, I think that's going to be what's so exciting for Bronco fans, because you'll literally be there present to have the opportunity to see something that is completely new. I mean, Bree, we're music and practice. I mean, like we're gonna finally get the opportunity to see truly like the joy be brought out almost in every single practice, if not every.
I'll be out there every day at training camp, and I'll give you a rundown of what the playlist was, because that'll be important, so we can kind of scientifically test the theory of whether or not the music and the genre affects their play.
Yeah, I mean,
Thanks, Raider Casper.
Bye, Raider Casper.
See you, Raider.
Can you imagine the player's reaction? It's like, wait, you want to actually know what I'm like as a human being? You're interested in my life, like, but you want us to bond as people and not just as someone that works for you? Oh, that's pretty cool. You know,
it's almost like the players get to enjoy the game that they grew up loving. Again, you know what I mean?
Like
instead of it just being a job.
Do you think Pat Shurmur cared about any of these people? Like,
well, how often do you hear about NFL players where they stop really liking football? And they kind of it's a payday. I mean, that sounds terrible, because to us, we're like, oh, but we love the game. It gets tiring after a while when that is the ask of you. Sometimes you have to alleviate some of that pressure. And honestly, I think this is gonna pay the trifold by the end of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's so what I kind of want to go into, and because we're able to take a different perspective on things, because we're not necessarily a media podcast where we have to report news. We can give our opinions and what we think could happen. So I kind of wanted to dig into realistic expectations for Russell Wilson. Do we think he's going to have an MVP season? And if we do, what do those numbers have to be? Are we looking at like 5,000 yards? Are we looking at 3,000 yards? How many touchdowns? And depending on where Wilson's at, where does that put the Broncos? If Russell Wilson wins the MVP, where are the Broncos? Are they in the divisional round? Are they in the Super Bowl? Are they out of the playoffs? What are we talking about here?
So I can actually give you some statistics on this from the last 5 years. So the last 5 years, it's been Rodgers twice, Lamar Jackson, Mahomes, and Brady in 2017, and only one of those
Brady
players.
last season.
What's that?
I
said it should have been Brady last season.
I don't disagree.
Just had to slide that in there, right?
So
I don't do.
So, Mike, think about it. Only one player in that time threw over 5,000 yards, and it was Mahomes, about 5,100 yards. And in a 17-game season, Rodgers had, and I know he missed a game, but Rodgers only had 4,100 yards. But the key for all these guys seems to be the lack of interceptions. I mean, and for Lamar, I mean, he just had a spectacular season. He had over 3,000 yards, but he had 1,200 yards rushing. So, I mean, he was a complete package at that point.
So if we're looking at Russell Wilson with the Broncos,
I think he's got to have 40. I think somewhere in the neighborhood of like 4,300 yards. Let's just say 42, 38 touchdowns and 8 interceptions or something along those lines.
I think that's fair. I will say anything that is below or right at the 10 interception mark and lower is a really good year for him. I think the 35 touchdown is a decent, base for him, I will say. I think that there's, not to be biased or whatever, but there's a case to be made for 40 touchdowns. But if he hits the 40 touchdowns and the crazy, interception total of under 10, then I think he's your clear MVP at that point. But it's just like, those are unrealistic expectations to a certain extent, to go with the 40, but I personally think, even 35 and 6 is still a stellar season.
Well, you're basically quoting Kirk Cousins numbers at that point. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that's
Another
really
underrated.
But there have to be wins attached to all of this as well.
Oh, yeah.
That's the common denominator too.
Exactly. And I think being realistic about this upcoming season is incredibly important, because right now there's a lot of inflated hope. There's a lot of wind beneath our sails. And I don't want that to get sucked out and for people to be like, oh man, I wasn't anticipating that. Russell Wilson hasn't been leading in a whole ton of categories lately. And I'm thinking you're looking at a potentially 4,000 tops yards out of him, even with the weapons that he has. Whether or not he drums down his interception to touchdown ratio to about a 30%. It's going to be like, what's reasonable, what's to be expected. Is the defense going to match up and keep him healthy and keep him not spending too much time out there, because he is slowing down a little bit. I'm not going to use the word regression. I'm not going to use the word that he's not as good as he used to be, but I do have a little bit of hesitation saying that the Broncos are going to make the playoffs next season, because the AFC West is going to be insanity. So I think realistic is not overshooting 10 wins. Like, I'd be happy with 10 wins. 11 would be even better. 11 almost guarantees you're that third team playing in for the AFC West. But I'm not saying this is playoffs. Like, I just don't think Russell Wilson is going to have an MVP season. Now, if it happens, cue this up, cut it, and then play it all over the place, and I'll eat my crow. But I don't want to get all crazy about it. Not because I'm not hopeful or excited, but because you have to be a little bit realistic, knowing that this is an entirely new system where you've taken great pieces and put them together, but there's no telling what'll happen.
Yeah, I think in this kind of circumstance, you kind of gotta be realistic. Like, do I think he's gonna get MVP his first season with all these new receivers and new scheme, new everything? No. But do I think the Broncos are gonna win the Super Bowl? Yes. The Broncos are gonna win the Super Bowl this year with Russell freaking Wilson. I can't even talk. Wishing for a Super Bowl. Right?
To think he's never received an MVP award as a Super Bowl, or MVP vote, I should say, as a Super Bowl winning quarterback is just absolutely shocking.
And this is my thing. Like, I'm kind of in between, kind of where Bree's at, kind of where you're at, where Cam's at. I'm thinking like 38, maybe. You kind of have to look at the situation that he came from and what he's in now. Like, Denver obviously has a better offensive line, and I think a lot of the struggles that Seattle and that Wilson had in Seattle was the offensive line. They were terrible. But I also think that Seattle has more proven receivers than Denver does. Now, that could change, but as of now, we don't actually know what the receiving core of the Broncos is going to look like, because we haven't seen them all play together that long or consistently.
Or with a consistent QB.
Yeah. Right. And plus, we have new coaching staff all over the place. We don't know exactly what they're going to do. We don't know how they're going to correct or adjust. So I hope he wins MVP. I at least hope he gets a vote. Do I think he's going to win MVP this year? Probably not. But I think the second year, there's very good possibility.
And I was going to say, to that point, I think it's one of the reasons why when we're talking about expectations and, for Bronco fans, and if you're listening to this, do not be, be all up in arms the moment that if there's like a little bit of some struggle, like the first few weeks of the season with this offense, because it's like, again, we are talking about, a team that has a new staff and has a new quarterback, and so it's going to take a little bit of some time to gel, even with, while the defensive staff is going to schematically keep things the same, it's also a new defensive staff as well that's in place. So, to certainly expect things to gel immediately from like week one, even from preseason and then on, is just unrealistic. It's just completely unrealistic. And so and frankly, to even use Brady, for example, there was a moment in time, like in Brady's first year with Tampa, where, first or second year, I forget what it was, but things weren't, all the greatest with the team. Like, they weren't really cooking on all cylinders. And then the moment that they, really were kicking on, in high gear, they were a well-oiled machine at that point, once everything, got, to where it needed to be. So I truly do believe that, there will be some point in time at the beginning point in the regular season. I can't put a number on it, but you will hit some rough patches probably early on in that season.
Yeah. And that was basically the point I was going to make was, you got Tampa Bay, who's coming off a Super Bowl year, basically returned the whole roster, returned all their coaching staff. And it took them 5, 6, 7 games to figure it out. So Denver coming in with a brand new coaching staff, brand new schemes, brand new players. It's going to take them a minute.
You mentioned schemes. One thing I am happy to hear is every defensive player that they've asked about the defensive scheme. All are saying it's essentially the same scheme as they ran last year, but with but with a couple twists and customization. So
did you have to ask every single one of them the same question, though?
I know. That's funny though. It seems pretty consistent, but that is nice to hear. And it was good to hear from Surtain and Draymond today. Draymond had an interesting story. They were asking him about the Wilson trade. And so he was excited about it. And then they said, well, there are players involved. And then he's like, he couldn't relax until he found out he wasn't one of them. So,
well, there's one very specific question that I wanted to ask Bree, and I wanted her to address it with Broncos Nation, to see how you felt about
Broncos Nation.
Broncos Nation.
For some reason, I thought it was going to get really serious in here, and I was like, I don't know if I can handle it.
Not at all.
Whew. So
you just went Dr. Oz on us.
I know, that was crazy. So the Broncos Nation, Broncos Country debacle that went down was one, Garrett Bowles. It's all right, buddy. Like, this is exactly what happened when John Elway said it too. It was a complete slip of the tongue. Andrew Mason made some really great points about his insight in the time of how it felt a little bit more organic, and Broncos Country sounded a little bit more marketing tier, and it was very forced on everybody to use that. But the real answer is it's Broncos Country, and it's absolutely nothing else. It will be nothing else. You can't change it. We are known as Broncos Country. Broncos land and Broncos Nation just sounds so goofy. It's like a three-ring circus.
I was gonna say, unless you're Mike List, calling yourself or calling it, Bronco Land or whatever, because that's your brand. I guess. But, yeah,
we should call it the neighborhood.
Well, the one ride they have at Bronco Land is have one of those scooters from that Elway rode, and it said you must be this tall to ride.
There's that and a carousel that's just full of meandering QBs.
I mean, it basically came down to Bree being like, I will fight to the death about this whole Broncos Country, Broncos Nation thing.
Well, I mean, we argued about it. There was somebody that I work with over at Mile High Sports was like, no, it's Bronco Land. And they were making photoshops, really terrible photoshops where we were while we were live on the radio. Like, he's controlling it was absolute nonsense. Half the time I feel like most of you people fight with me just to see me get riled up and like irritated, and like, more power to you, but you're wrong, and it's Broncos Country.
It is Broncos Country. I mean,
I have a mug that literally says it. So,
not that I have a vote, but it is Broncos Country.
Not that I have a vote.
Hey, you do have a vote, my friend. You do.
All right. Any other topics we want to hit real quick before we end this thing out?
Mike, you got to talk some sense into Landon. He just dropped a Broncos Galaxy on us.
I'm not. I wasn't even going to.
I don't know. I'm kind of down with Broncoverse, though.
Welcome to Bronco Land.
Broncoverse.
Yeah, Broncoverse.
I could see that.
Can you imagine showing up to the stadium and like a big loudspeaker just says that in John Elway's voice, and it just seems so trippy. You'd be taking acid at that point.
Walton's just gonna build a huge new stadium with a amusement park around it called Bronco Land that you have to walk through to get to the stadium.
Oh man,
it'd be awesome. I'd go back.
Like Garrett Bowles at the front goes, sorry, folks, park's closed.
Oh, man.
The parasailer got caught in the roller coaster again.
All right, so with that, we're gonna end the podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share, and turn on notifications so you can catch all of our content when it is posted. Tune into our other podcast, the Wild Wild West podcast, which is tomorrow at 7:30, 6:30, 5:30, 4:30. The Nothing Rhymes podcast, which airs on Thursday. And by the way, today is their 1 year of when they joined the MHRT Network. So make sure you shout them out. Let them know that they are awesome, or they suck. Either one, whichever one, I don't care. And Broncos breakdown. Go ahead, Boggins. What are you going to say?
I was going to say, like and subscribe if you really want to poop in Russell Wilson's house. That's what I'm just saying.
Yes, there you go. Like and subscribe if you want to drop a deuce in Russell Wilson's house. And then Broncos breakdown hosted by Bronco Bill on Friday, both at 7, 6, 5, 4. Thank you so much for joining us. we will see you tomorrow when Richie Riche goes up against the Raiders, Chiefs, and the Chargers fans on the Wild Wild West show. Bye, everybody. We'll see you later.